Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show for today. And yes, today is, of course, the 22nd of August. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show. Is it great to be here tonight? I'm your host, Charlie. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers to round up all the latest news. Hello, Zach.
Hi.
Now, Zach, this week's show is going to be, again, all about news. I've changed the start of the show up now, and the digest has been replaced with a new segment called Hot Headline, because we're going to be talking about the biggest news story of the week. This is what the Hot Headline is, the biggest news story of the week. And I want to start, Zach, with Joe Biden and Afghanistan, because unfortunately there has been a lot of backlash that is facing the US president over the withdrawal of his troops from Afghanistan as the Taliban have now taken over Kabul. Zach, what is your reaction to President Biden withdrawing his troops from Afghanistan?
He's received a lot of backlash by the way he's handled this evacuation of Afghanistan, thanks to the Taliban suddenly taking control. As I said before, Charlie, I think this is a huge intelligence failure by the Americans, also by the UK. So yeah, it's a big failure, Charlie. It in some ways it is a problem. We've obviously seen the images of innocent Afghans trying to get onto the planes. It's been a bit of a horror show. We've seen major reports from the likes of Calissa Ward at CNN, providing what life is like in Kabul now. This is what the US didn't want in some ways, and Biden's under fire because of the response, not because that he wanted to get troops out of Afghanistan, which a lot of people supported, and the same for Donald Trump, who when he was president wanted them out by May 1st. I think that he's been criticised, Charlie, for the way he's actually executed the way out. I mean, I suppose it's chaos when this goes down quicker. There was warnings beforehand, which is probably why he's got such a bad response, saying that the Taliban would take over, then they would cause this chaos, and it would be problematic for them. It sounds like the Biden's approach is it's just approaches to focus on the fact that they're leaving Afghanistan. I'm not sure. I mean, fair enough. I mean, they wanted to leave Afghanistan, but it's how they've handled it seems to be a bit of a problem. If you look at the polls suggest on Afghanistan, they support the American people support leaving Afghanistan. They seem to be very split on how Joe Biden has handled it. And it's starting to affect them in the approval ratings a little bit. It's at 48%, which is around about what Trump peaked with, I think, throughout his whole time as president. That's not unusual to see it for Joe Biden. It looks quite bad. I mean, if you look at it from longer term, what Trump got, his approval was around about that for pretty much all the time. So how do they recover it? I suppose he's addressing the nation about half an hour, 25 minutes at 9 p.m. UK time. We'll probably find out a bit about what the situation there and the updates from his security and what's going to be done again. But their pace is increasing, though, on the amount of people he's getting out. It's about 8,000, 9,000 a day on aeroplanes as well. So there is some progress being made there. It appears his cabinet have shown united fronts on this. I have to say, it's unusual, though, for Joe Biden to show less humanity to what's happening in Afghanistan to his normal self, where, he's a very humane person. He's very caring. And that sort of thing. And it hasn't really come across like it this week. It just really hasn't in some ways. It sounds like it's almost like the best of both Biden policy and America First policy that Trump did in terms of the approach that he's taken on this. Maybe he's trying to think of the political implications, possibly, but he's not had the best of the week. It's probably his lowest week of his presidency yet.
I have to agree, Zach. This is a difficult week for Biden, I have to say. He's under pressure.
Yeah. He is under pressure. Maybe that pressure will calm down once he's finally got everything out. But I know there's his own Democratic committees are going to probably investigate how this was handled, which is Democrat control, which is not a good look, especially if your own members of the House are calling it botched and flawed and everything like that. I know there's a few members that are close to the president that are defending it as well, and especially the progressives and some moderates as well. But there's a lot of criticism from the Republican side, which in some cases they're rewriting history about this, how they could have handled it. You know, there has been many criticisms from the Republican side. I read somewhere this week that if Republicans get back the House in 22, that they'll basically treat this as like Benghazi, when, you know, it had a few Americans that was killed there, and then they started a whole select committee and brought in the Secretary of State in, and, you know, that was like that. I think one senator, Lindsey Graham, suggested this week that that there should be articles of impeachment against Joe Biden if an American got killed in Afghanistan, which I think he's missed the last 20 years, for example, for this. But there we go. I suppose the exit what matters. But yeah, this has been a difficult week, I think, for the president. It's probably a short-term hit for him. Whether it can improve in the long term, rebuild that trust, it's a possibility. He's very good at long-term solutions. Maybe he's thinking about that. But yeah, very difficult week for the president, I think, and with plenty of criticism.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Now, whilst I'm here, I'm going to now play for you exactly what Joe Biden had to say as he defended his decision to end the US war in Afghanistan just the other week. Have a listen to what he had to say. Here it is right now.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces.
As the fallout over the collapse of Afghanistan intensifies, President Biden insisting that bringing U.S. troops home is still the right decision.
I will not repeat the mistakes we've made in the past.
And while he's standing by his exit strategy, the president also acknowledging that the administration was caught off guard by the speed of the Taliban takeover.
The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated.
Now, with Kabul in chaos amid the frantic rush to evacuate, the president saying he bears some responsibility.
I am president of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me.
But he's also blaming his predecessor, claiming the Trump administration's timeline for the drawdown tied his hands, forcing him to follow through or risk reigniting the conflict, and blaming the Afghan forces, saying he gave them every opportunity to fight for their nation, but that they failed to protect their homeland.
It is wrong to order American troops to step up when Afghanistan's own armed forces would not.
But Republicans are aiming their attacks squarely at President Biden.
I think the president felt strongly about this, obviously. He overruled his own military leaders to do it, and he owns it.
And this morning, even some Democrats are calling for answers. The head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, vowing to investigate why the U.S. was not better prepared for, quote, a worst-case scenario.
Thank you there. That was some of the news from Afghanistan. Of course, we heard there from a couple of other Republicans as well. Also, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the party, spoke about this. And yeah, Zach, I have to say, Donald Trump did fire back at Joe Biden just the other day at one of his rallies in Alabama, a state that I believe is having a COVID surge at the moment. What did you make of the former president's remarks about Joe Biden's handling of Afghanistan?
Well, in some ways, let's think about this, Charlie. It would have not made a difference anyway where Trump was in charge. I know, his idea that, let's bomb all the, the defense areas of Afghanistan and then take the military out. It's just, I don't know, it seems like a nonsensical idea because you just end up killing civilians then. It was bonkers what I thought he put out in the original statement. And it obviously interprets that in the same marks as well. Frankly, if America stuck to the May 1st deadline under Donald Trump, the Taliban would have been in there even before today, they would have took even more advantage of that, Charlie. It made no difference. They would have all the time to build up. Quite frankly, and I know you're basically saying, "Oh, we'll get all the civilians out there, but then blah 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 blah." But what if you didn't get all the civilians out? What if you did decide to airstrikes on these areas? It's ridiculous, Charlie. I think it's just a bit ridiculous, to be honest, Charlie. So it would have made no difference, quite frankly. I think it would have made no difference. I can imagine this could have been just as botched with him in charge compared to Joe Biden. I mean, yeah, you got legitimate criticism for Joe Biden here with all these military people, which is not necessarily a good look. Especially, I mean, we could roar the same if Trump did something like that, and it's not necessarily a good look. But his remarks at Alabama, really, it's not really a solution, really, Charlie. I don't think.
I have to say, this is a big week for US politics, particularly the biggest week of Biden's presidency so far. Please comment down below, guys. I'm Charlie Tolhurst. I'm live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for the Charlie Tolhurst Show. What do you make of President Biden's handling of Afghanistan? Please comment down below because I want to hear your opinions. We really want to hear your opinions. It's really important. And obviously, staying on this hot headline, because we're going to stay with Afghanistan for now, because I want to talk about Parliament in the UK. Now, Zach, it was recalled on Wednesday here in the UK after the situation intensified over in Kabul. And there's been a bit of criticism from the Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, after he was found on holiday and apparently not engaging in phone call with Afghanistan leaders. And Wes Streeting earlier called for his resignation. And Zach, what do you stand by Wes Streeting's comments?
Oh, yeah, I agree with his. Let me give you a comparison, right, okay, of what Dominic Raab said in 2012, that British workers were the most ladies' ideologists in the world. Well, we could certainly apply that to his logic based on what the last couple of days where he's been on holiday. I mean, that's just, come on. How can you be on? You're the foreign secretary. You're supposed to be in command with the defense secretary about what's happening. This is the big role that the foreign secretary has to fill, is managing events, managing events overseas and speaking with allies. He did none of that. He did nothing of that, Charlie. He left it until Monday, Tuesday to all wait for that. Whilst Kabul was already falling, and there was witnesses saying he turned up on the beach and stuff like that. It was ridiculous. Frankly, Charlie, it was disgraceful that he was on holiday whilst this was all happening. It was disgraceful. It was so pin-headed. It was so tone-deaf. It was lazy. The fact that he couldn't even put a couple of calls to the ambassadors in there, that is extraordinary, absolute lazy. The fact that he refused, and the Prime Minister, there was reports that the Prime Minister let him have his holiday. That's pathetic. It is pathetic, Charlie. He should go. He should be slung out the door, because he's had a really bad. He's had awful week, as well. And, his conduct has been shameful, really. Just sitting on the beach, not even taking calls, and refused to take calls, trying to delegate it to other ministers. His civil servants has been on holiday as well, which is just disgraceful. So, yeah, he's let everyone else do all the city work, whilst he's been on there, sitting there in the bathing sun, doing nothing, like nobody else's business.
Yeah. It's interesting, Zach. I have to say, I do think Raab is in trouble as well with his position. Is his position untenable? Please comment down below, because I think, again, to see Parliament back with pretty much a full crowd of MPs on Wednesday after these COVID restrictions have been lifted, you've got to think surely there was some raucous debate in the House of Commons on this issue, particularly an MP from the Conservative Party. Tom Tugendhat actually criticised his own foreign secretary for the mistakes he made in Afghanistan.
Yeah, Tom Tugendhat there were some very powerful speeches in Parliament, Charlie. I can just name a few: Keir Starmer, Theresa May, Tom Tugendhat, Tobias Ellwood, all clutching their straws, getting their hotheads out. There were some very good speeches from Conservative benches. I have to say, Charlie, on this, as well as the Labour bench. The most dismal one, though, came with the intervention of Desmond Swain, unfortunately, who suggested that the people fleeing Afghan should be able to fight for themselves. Well, I'm not sure, if you think about it, poor Afghan civilians who are trying to run away from the Taliban are going to really fight themselves with no weapons and themselves, really. They don't even know how to fight the poor people. So I don't know what he suggested. Yeah, it's not a good look. There was some good stuff in Parliament. Not Desmond Swain, though. Let's just say that.
Not Desmond Swain.
Not Desmond Swain.
I know he'd been calling for the restrictions to be lifted for ages. We all heard him on.
That's a different matter.
I know. I remember I saw the scenes, I think, last week of thousands of people clambering aboard a US cargo flight, trying to flee Kabul, and I saw the horrible scenes of people clambering onto this aircraft the other week. It was horrible. I think quite a few people fell to death from there. Oh, it's horrendous. I think we're in for a big refugee crisis, a big migrant crisis from this. So our borders will be tested over the next coming weeks. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
On this issue. But please, guys, that is all we have time for on the hot headline of this week's edition of Charlie Tolhurst Show. But yes, the hot headline will be back next week. What's the biggest news story we can bring you? We'll just let you know. But we're going to move on from that now to sports round, and we're going to be motorsporting now, because this content is all themed to motorsport. And I want to start with the Le Mans 24 Hours, the big event of the weekend, one of the biggest events of the calendar. Toyota won again. I think Mike Conway was leading most of it. I think he ended up going on to win the race. But there was an awful accident for Sophia Flörsch, I think, during the night. And it was a horrible crash. And I watched the onboard, and I have to say, the LMP2 car didn't look very well after that incident at all.
No, I have to say though, Charlie. Obviously, what we're on to Jose Maria Lopez, Mike Conway, Camilo Brazier. They were the three winners of the Le Mans 24 Hours this week, and it was Hartley, Buemi, and Nakajima in second. It was Andres Negrego, Matthew Vikaoka, and Nicolas Lepire in third place. Well done to them. But yeah, that was, I have to say, Charlie, opening hours of the race was very eventful because it was wet weather, Charlie. That was one thing. Everyone like in the hypercar had literally had problems. Literally all of them. The Alpines had problems. At least some of the Toyotas had problems. It was chaos, Charlie. There was a crash at the first corner with the Alpine as well. Went off. Or was that the Toyota? I think it was the Toyota.
Buemi spun off at the first corner on the first lap.
The first corner, that's my bad. But yeah, that's Toyota. But yeah, it was wet and there was contact there. There was also some heartbreak at some point as well. There's definitely stuff like that. There was a few crashes. Commiserations to the women's team who unfortunately had got rammed into a couple of hours into the race as well. It was chaos, Charlie. It was chaos at the first couple of hours, and then it calmed down for the second day. And boy, I have to say, Charlie, I really think this year's one was pretty good. One of the better ones yet, Charlie, I think, in terms of the racing. As you said, there's a few crashes over the night, but it was great, Charlie. It was great. There was, it was good. It was good. The one thing I feel heartbreak for was Robert Kubica, Louis Dertad, and Yiffy Yi, who were probably going to win that in LMP2, Charlie. And then they broke down the last 2 or so laps. That's the second time in 5 years that's happened. Which, honestly, I feel sorry for them because they would have won in LMP2. It was Vincent Bossi who won instead for them. It wasn't a 1-2. But yeah, there was drama everywhere when you looked at it, Charlie, throughout the race.
There was, I have to say that I watched the start of it. It looked really cool. I think there was a collision. I think the lap one collision with the hypercar was a Gilacanis car. Olivier Pla ran into the Sebastian Buemi. I think that's what caused the first sort of, I wouldn't say a first ever safety car or a slow zone there, but it was a horrible. And obviously the hypercars were the new class this year. And actually, in the end, it was Toyota Gazoo Racing that won that class with Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez. First, with second going the way of Sebastian Buemi, Kazuki Nakajima, and Brendan Hartley, and third running to the Alpine Elf map mount there of Andre Negreo, Nicolas Lapire, and Maxime Vivier as well. Do apologise for some of the pronunciations of some of these foreign names.
Yeah, I
I'm not
pronounce Arsenal as well, to be fair.
The best of them. LMP2, Team WRT won that class. That was Robin Frines, Ferdinand Hasberg, and Charles Michel in 6th. 7th was the Jota, Sean Galal, Stoffel Van Dorn, and Tom Blomqvist as well. Actually, most of them, believe it or not, Formula E drivers in that team there. And number 8 was the Panis Racing of Julian Canal, Alan James, and Will Stevens, who took that honours there in LMP 2 GTE Pro as well. The winner of that class, I think, was a Ferrari, I think. Alessandro Pierguidi, I think, won that class. James Collado and Komi Ligoa won that one with second go on the way of Antonio Garcia, Taylor Jordan, and Nicky Katzberg. And third was a Porsche GT team of Kevin Estre, Neil Jarni, and Michael Christensen. And GT Am as well was the number 60 entry, I think. Iron Lynx car, which I think was again a Ferrari 48. No, it was. Hold on, what car was that again? I do apologise. I'm having to go in.
It's a bit hard to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, 488, a 488 GTE Evo, sorry. And that was Claudio Schiavone, Pablo Rutzen, and also Raffaele Guinamara as well. So yes, very confusing standings there from Le Mans. But yes, that was the standings for this year's Le Mans 24-hour event. It'll all be on again next year, and we'll keep you posted on all the action from Le Mans. But we're going to move on now from Le Mans to Indycar, because I haven't spoken about Indycar for a while. We had quite an interesting race at Nashville, to say the least, with a crash fest. We had Indianapolis last week with a win for Will Power. But this week's one, we go to an oval, and we go to Illinois at Gateway for the Barmarito Automotive Group 300. And what has been your takeaway over the last two IndyCar races?
Well, the last takeaway of the two IndyCar races is anything could happen, really, Charlie. It certainly did. I haven't seen any of it Gateway, by the way, because it was in the middle of the night, and I obviously couldn't be bothered to see it because I was too busy watching the Le Mans. But I see it as New Garden that won at Gateway, and even took the championship lead with a couple of races to go from Alex Palou, who's been leading up most of the time. As well, Colton Herbert has problems as well during the mechanical issue. Who was actually going to win that race, Colton Herbert, but obviously had mechanical issues as well. Pato was chasing him down as New Garden as well, but managed to get hold off by New Garden as well. And then Palou had an accident as well, which is obviously the reason why he lost his championship lead, thanks to Enrique crashing into Dixon and then collecting Palou as well. Grosjean as well this is his first oval race that he took part in IndyCar as well, and he finished in the top 10, which is an extremely impressive result, Charlie, as well. So what I will do now is get the standings, let the results up on here. And New Garden, just award second, Will Powell's third, McLaughlin fourth, Bordeaux fifth, so sixth, Hunter Ray seventh, Simon Pagenaud eighth, Marcus Oates ninth, and Jack Harvey.
Good result for Jack Harvey.
In 10th, Grosjean finished 14th at the end of the day, a lap behind actually. Looks like he was one of the last runners on the track really, because James Hinkley is 17 laps behind, and he didn't get. Some people didn't get too far. Palou, Rinus VK, Ed Jones, Graham Rahal, Ed Carpenter, all crashing out. It was a bit of a crash fest, you said, Charlie. Only 13 drivers finished on the lead lap. From what I saw. With Newgarden winning the race. Newgarden has now taken the championship lead now with just a couple of races to go, Charlie. So we're at the business end of the season now in terms of it as well. So, yeah, this is going to be very interesting, Charlie. Newgarden, I was actually third. Is he third in the standings? He looks like he's third in the standings. Apparently he took the championship as well. Let me get this up here because this will be probably helpful. Somewhere around here.
Yeah, just got the last few IndyCar races up for you. So September 12th, we go to Portland. Then we go to Laguna Seca afterwards. And then the final round is at Long Beach on the 26th of September. I thought I'd update you on the calendar.
So about 3 rounds to go. What you're saying that sounds like doesn't sound too long now. So that's not long now, Charlie.
No, it isn't. It's going to go quick. I mean, honestly, the days go quick, and you have to say IndyCar has got a big championship. There's quite a few drivers going. Scott McLaughlin, by the way, 4th place. He seems to go really well around these ovals. He got a second at one of the Texas races. He seems to love these ovals, which is quite interesting, I think. So
Absolutely. I've just found the standings, Charlie. Let me just find the standings now. Here we go. 10 points between Palou and Pato Ward. That's who took the championship. Pato Ward. My bad. I thought it was Newgarden, but Newgarden is not far behind. He's about 22 points behind Palou and Ward with only 3 races to go. So yeah, this is going to be a big couple of got back to a couple of races. This is a big deal. Actually, there's 3 drivers still in the right. Ward, Palou, Newgarden. There's a lot to game for, Charlie. I think there's 3 races.
Yeah, next one's at Portland, and that is in just over a couple of weeks' time. So we'll keep you updated on that. But moving on now, we're going to go to NASCAR. Just very quickly, I'm just going to give you the updates from that event, which is the Firekeepers Casino 400. Kyle Larson currently leading that with Chase Elliott 2nd, Alex Bowman 3rd, Denny Hamlin 4th, Tyler Reddick 5th. But the last time out, they went to Indianapolis on the road course for the Brickyard 200. And it was a race that saw a late collision between Denny Hamlin and also another driver who was fighting for the win as well. And in the end, AJ Allmendinger took his first win at Indy. And Zach, what did you make of the Indianapolis NASCAR race?
Eventful. I have to say, Charlie, eventful. As you said, AJ Allmendinger, Denny Hamlin coming to blows in the last couple of laps. There was also an incident I saw, Charlie, where the curb went up and there was a few drivers basically skinning around in it like oil and basically causing a bit of a pile up as well. That was quite something to watch. Seeing the curb put up and cause an rather large accident, Charlie. It was an eventful race. This is obviously the second year that they've gone to do it on the road course. And it was great. It was great, Charlie. I think road course races make these races so much better, Charlie. I mean, oval racing is pretty good. It does get a bit boring sometimes, but it's generally been really good on the road courses, Charlie. I've enjoyed every race of it on it. It's been good.
Yeah. playoffs coming up next month as well. So the chase is going to be getting ever closer, and we'll be keeping you updated with the standings on that. But yeah, it's going to look very interesting. Denny Hamlin certainly needs to find some ground if he wants to get into the chase coming up next month. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And also Formula One back next weekend after the long summer break, going to Spa, Francorchamps for the bank holiday weekend. Before I move on to my next segment, I just want to say that all you guys out there who are going to be watching the Belgian Grand Prix next week, we are, as you know, it's 2 years ago since we lost the great Antoine Hubert after he sadly crashed at Eau Rouge. And Zach, what's your what memories do you have about Antoine Hubert that you'd like to share on the show tonight?
Oh, Charlie, he was, probably a future Renault driver. He looked talented. He was young. He was crisp. He was such a, he was great. And an accident like that happens, but it was just cruel in the way he was taken. He had so much potential talent, and it's just a shame he's still not with us because he could be driving an Alpine seat by now, I think.
And also as well, Zach, what teams do you think have impressed you at the midpoint of the 2021 season as well in Formula One?
A few of us contentions, McLaren, pretty good job. I'd say Alpine at some points. Ocon's been a bit on and off, but his victory, it's a very surprise victory. Say Hungary's put the team back on great form, and Alonso's driving was just been sensational, I think, Charlie, as well. So McLaren and Alpine doing good. I think Ferrari have improved somewhat. Not as good as previous years, though. I think need to get a little bit onwards. But yeah, so they're the three teams that I've been impressed with: McLaren, Alpine, and Ferrari a little bit as well. They've slightly.
What about Red Bull and Mercedes? Where would you rank them?
Yeah, Red Bull have obviously been the favourites. Mercedes have caught them up, I think. Putting upgrades in Silverstone has really helped them, Charlie. I thought Hungary was going to be Red Bull's track, but obviously it wasn't. And I think as well, Max has had, it's been sensational this year. Probably the driver of the season for me, but, he's had the few problems that he's pretty much been innocent of, such as the tyre failure in Azerbaijan, for example, the Silverstone crash, where I still think it wasn't his fault. And then obviously Hungary, where he lost aero thanks to being pounded by Bottas and innocently there. It's just luck, not driver fault, but prevented Verstappen from leading this championship at the moment. I think it's just luck. And it always, Mercedes have been the lucky ones. It's gone their way. And they're leading this halfway point, which is going to be a big confidence boost. Belgium, though, will be a testability to how fast they can really put up with the car, because Red Bulls are so fast. And let's see, it will be a test to see whether their upgrades are actually reliable and flexible across multiple circuits.
Yeah, and Zach, I have to say before we move on, this is a circuit where in 2016, Max Verstappen and Kimi Räikkönen both collided many times. And also, the thing is, if Max Verstappen was to win the World Championship, you've got to think he's one of the most aggressive drivers on the field. In 2016, he went to overtake Kimi Räikkönen, or Kimi Räikkönen went to pass him into Les Combes, and Verstappen moved very late under braking to cut him off. Do you think that Verstappen has to change his driving style to win the championship, given the move he done there quite a few years ago?
I don't think he needs to change his driving style. His driving style has consistently been good. And fair in some ways, Charlie, for the last couple of years, actually. I mean, he's matured in that department. Let's just say that. He's aggressive, but he's matured in the way that he doesn't take any unnecessary risks sometimes. I have to say as well, obviously, we've seen some incredible moves in the early years, like the one where he was in Toro Rosso, where he did that insane move off nearly just outside the track, nearly at turn 19. And obviously there was 2016 where he pretty much went too aggressive, and then we had the Verstappen rule of leaving a car's width, not weaving in front of others. So yeah, he does bring lots of aggression. and I think he will continue to be aggressive, but I think he continues to be fair as well, Charlie.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Formula One return next week, the Belgian Grand Prix, and we'll keep you posted on the latest news from there. But we're going to move on now from that. Charlie's good news launches. The week, of course, gets positive news, and this is my segment to try and cheer you guys up from rather looking at the mainstream media's, should I say, least so positive news. But I'm going to start with some positive news today because I want to talk about some news. Meet the plastic hunting pirates of Cornwall. Yes. The pirates' bounty is melted down to make sea kayaks, which are then used to collect more rubbish. Now, from the top of typical Cornwall to the Isle of Skye, with a message of all aboard, people are seeking out to hard-to-reach marine plastic from the water. Now, based on their raving home on the former Dutch icebreaker, Auntie Steve Green and his partner Monica Hartelover in the main picture have coordinated more than 300 volunteers, many of them local to their base on the Helford River in Cornwall. Steve Green is the pirate-in-chief of Clean Ocean Sailing, COS, in COS in brackets, a group of sailors, surfers, swimmers and divers who are united in a love of the ocean and are sickened by the amount of rubbish in it. With a fixed crew, the couple's 2-year-old captain, Labrador Rosie, the 130-year-old 55-ton boat, which acts as a mobile base camp. People disembark in a flotilla of smaller boats to reach the inaccessible parts of Cornwall's commanding coastline and clear as much junk as they can as possible. This is amazing. These people have created a boat to actually clean our oceans out. That is actually quite interesting.
Wow.
Very, very interesting news indeed. As well, we also have the very famous cookbook for people that have long COVID. Interestingly, now 2 food writers have penned a cookbook for people whose taste buds have been affected by COVID, and is available for free. Extremely repulsive, like rotting stew, just food reviews go, it's scathing. But according to food writer Ryan Riley, that's how meat, garlic, and onions can taste to affected people by long COVID. So he hopes his latest cookbook will provide ample inspiration for better tasting alternatives. It was actually co-written with Kimberly Duke. Tasting flour is for people experiencing changes in their smells result of the virus, which one study could be much as 41% of all cases. That's about the number of cases of people that have long COVID. But the positive news is that the book has been created exclusively for that. And another thing as well is another plastics news story. Meet the hikers and bikers who are keeping the UK's countryside clean. So it all started with a close-up of mud-spattered face and the outline of a cyclist behind the hashtags hashtag pin it and bin it and hashtag protect what you love followed. The post attracted just 62 likes, yet a movement was born. The man behind the post, 42-year-old mountain bike enthusiast Dom Ferris, draws the attention to name of Instagram accounts Trash Free Falls. It evokes a hope that, quote, first back in October 2017, achieving rubbish free biking and walking trials perfectly possible if, and here's the biggie, we act together. The choice of name for the grassroots cleanup is felt as a critical first up. Ferris reflects it was very important that we're not seen as, again, something. It's all about what we are for. So yes, I have to say that positive good news segment this week was full of good news. 2 news stories on cleaning up plastic, and also a news story which is very exclusive to cookbooks. I'm sure Remy will be sitting on his in his kitchen right now from Ratatouille and certainly stirring up many dishes. I'm sure in the future. But that's all your good news segment. We'll do that again next week. But moving on from the good news now to In the Spotlight. And Zach, Australia and New Zealand's COVID crisis going backwards. And Zach, what do you make of Jacinda Ardern's decision to lock New Zealand down and extend it as the Delta variant is only there in very small numbers?
It's quite something to see a country being shut down because of one COVID case. That's quite something. I suppose it's consistent with their, zero COVID approach of if we see something, we're gonna have to shut it down. If that means shutting the country down, then we have to do that. It's consistent in that. I suppose you don't have enough vaccines at the moment out to really change your approach. Really, in fairness, just because for Jacinda Ardern, unfortunately, that's the approach that they're taking. I mean, let's look at the cases today. Actually, it was 24. So yeah, this is propped up again, Charlie. And there's been a lockdown imposed. Rather sadly, 20 was in Auckland, and one in the capital of Wellington. 5 people hospital. No one was in intensive care. So no one is exactly dying, but obviously there's a few serious cases that are going about, which is probably why lockdown has happened in some ways. But I suppose in some ways, I know you could complain about it quite legitimately, whether it's needed or not. But it's consistent with Jacinda Ardern's approach. Let's just say that consistent. One thing that consistently happens in Australia, though, is the amount of cases that are going up. 891 in today. Yesterday, Charlie, 637 on a 7-day average. It's going up there. New South
Melbourne,
Wales
and it's New South Wales is having a huge spike.
830 cases. 550 people are in hospital. There is a problem there. The system's holding up, but the ICUs are going up as well. Victoria, 65 new cases. Shepparton, 21. There is a vaccination blitz trying to go on there. But there is also a huge problem as well. And this week, Charlie, there has been massive anti-lockdown protests on Saturday as well in Melbourne. There was some huge protests. They called it the most violent in nearly 20 years in the city. 4,000 in the crowd as well, which, probably helped super spread it a little bit more. 700 Victoria police officers had to be deployed. It was ugly scenes in Melbourne, Charlie. And it's just the way the virus is going, it's getting a bit ugly there as well.
I have to say, Zach, on the subject of Australia and Melbourne, they have announced new restrictions, and there's apparently a curfew in effect from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. So basically, the curfew means you cannot leave your home unless for essential purposes, like say for essential work like healthcare, and you have to carry a permit round with you. It almost reminds me of the lockdown they had last year, that very strict lockdown where they were like shut up for so long. And it's a situation in New South Wales. They're still shut up. People are shut in their homes. The virus is still spreading over there. They are struggling to vaccinate people, like with getting vaccines. And mind you, they are the fastest vaccinating country in the world at the moment, according to this. But the thing is, Zach, I have to say something. I feel like the leadership over there hasn't been very good. It's been a bit below par. How are Australia going to get back out of this at some point? What do you see them going forward there? What do you think they're going to have to do going forward to get out of this crisis and reopen the country?
Vaccinate. Very simple, Charlie. Vaccinate, and double vaccinate. It's the only real way that people are finding out to get the ways out of lockdown, Charlie. That's the only way. And this system of having a cold permit reminds me of a real life vaccine passport for pretty much everywhere. It's permit. It's like a vaccine passport if you think about it, Charlie, because you haven't to hold it on you. You have to show it. You have to prove of it. Oh, it's like a passport for living life. Okay, well, I suppose that's how they deal with it in France when they had their first lockdown. You just basically have to show papers just to get out the door, Charlie. So it's very French-like happening going on there, but oh well. It is what it is. That's life there. a 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew, a stay-at-home order. You know, that's how they do lockdowns there in Australia.
Whilst we in Britain actually have restrictions lifted, so we're in a completely different position compared to where the Aussies and the Kiwis are at the moment. Oh no. What can I say in New Zealand and Australia? They need to certainly get a grip on this, otherwise there will be plenty of media hypocrisy, I'm sure, in Australia and New Zealand. But yes, please comment down below, guys, what you think about this. Do you think I'm right and said there is media hypocrisy, or do you think they're handling the situation well? Please let me know. But we're going to move on now from In the Spotlight, because that's the only thing I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to be talking about something on my new segment, Charlie Asks. My final part of the show, Charlie Asks. Now, I want to talk to you guys about this week's edition of this segment here, Charlie Asks. And this segment is very, very important. I'm going to be talking about health and social care this week, about course options in health and social care. But my question to you is this. Do you think that more young people will apply for courses in health and social care because of the pandemic? That is my question this week. Do you think more young people will apply for health and social care courses in the future because of the pandemic? And Zach, what's your view on this? Do you think more young people will be recruited into areas like health and social care because of COVID?
I would say yes. I think if you look at it, Charlie, whilst COVID is a dangerous thing, and to work in a hospital or to do health care lessons is pretty dangerous, I think saving people has been a motivation. And these people, we've done the clap, for carers each week, last year for quite a bit. And we've looked at the scenes in the hospital. We sort of sympathise of what's happened. And I think, there will be motivation for people to join. So I think they will be. I know it's a pretty dangerous environment. It's the same dangerous environment. It's like driving a car, for example. You've got a chance of, having problems there, something like that. I think, there will be motivation. I think there's going to be more courses. I think there's going to be more people who have an interest in this. And I think, I think there is definitely a motivation now to keep this going so that, there's more of these people for the future if we ever need them.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm just getting up an article right now on South Essex College's website. By the way, I have enrolled, finally now. I am enrolled, so I will be officially starting there in September, doing a completely different course though. But I just want to talk to you guys about this course and why I think it's to young people. Because if you think about it, with COVID as well, more young people probably are going to go for a career in, say, working in healthcare, working in like the hospitals, working in dentists. Think about it. We've had a massive health crisis during the pandemic, where people have been missing appointments, and more people have become more people have been recruited to these areas. But some of the courses in health and social care have actually been pretty impressive. Like, as you can see here with the career destinations, by attending this course and doing all of these courses at South Essex College, you've got level 1, level 2, level 3, which is the equivalent of a BTEC, which is a BTEC course. That's equivalent of an A level. The level 1's equivalent 1 GCSE. But as you can see on here, look at some of the options. You've got childminder, play worker, care worker, hospital nurse. You could actually work as a nurse in a hospital, which is what a lot of people have done during the pandemic. Some of our key workers in the NHS. You can even work as a paramedic by just doing a health and social care course. You can actually work as a paramedic and go out there on the front line and help the country's effort. You've also got other jobs as well. You've got early years education specialists, helping out in nurseries and childcare, being essential workers, being an essential worker whilst some of it are looking after young children's parents who have to go to work, who work in like the hospitals and as delivery drivers. You've got primary school teacher, midwife, learning disabilities nurse, speech and language therapist. there's so many options on here in terms of what you can do. And obviously on this course, you'll cover a variety of things, like, for example, learning about the industry, learning about stuff like like young children, with how to deal with young children, and even learning how to do first aid. Zach, what do you think the health and social care offers to you? Do you think it's a great opportunity for people to go and get into this sector?
I think it is. I think it is, Charlie. I think it's well needed as well. There is a gap. There is still sometimes a little bit of a backlog and a bit of a gap. And I think people taking it is a good opportunity to fill the gap as well. It's hard, it's stressful, but it's big help to not only you, but to people and others that you'll meet new people. You interact with them even if they're not in the best states. You might make new friends on the way. You know, these people do incredible jobs, Charlie, I think, and they're simply incredible. And we take great attitude, and I think people who do this could be on course in the future, 5-10 years time, to be one of those people, I think.
It is interesting, and as I said as well, like with the courses available at South Essex College in this, you've got Introduction to Early Years Health and Social Care and Early Years Settings Level 1 certificate. That's available at Southend or Thurrock campus. You've got the Level 2 Level 2 certificate working with children early years and primary settings. You also got a course in Health and Social Care Level 2, Childcare and Education Early Years Education as a technical diploma. And there's also a Health and Social Care Level 3 diploma, which will cover stuff such as human lifespan development, diversity, and also cover stuff like first aid as well, which actually first aid is very, very important in life. Like if somebody is unconscious, you need to know how to respond to that. And trust me, I've got a first aid qualification myself. It's really, really important. And I feel like many students, particularly young students who are like going on to get careers because of COVID, because of the effects of COVID, and because a lot of people have seen our incredible NHS go through what they've gone through over the last years, fighting this on the front line. A lot more people, Zach, will certainly want to be a nurse or a doctor. They really want to help our country out. Do you think this movement is going to start once the proper crisis around the world finishes?
Yeah, I think so, Charlie. I think so. I think, as I said, there'll be big motivation to apply for that. And I think as well, despite the fact it's probably scary, it might put some people off. It'll probably put more people on, though, Charlie. It'll probably motivate people to do it. And I think there's certainly a space to see a big increase in development of healthcare courses and childcare as well.
Yeah, so that's my opinion this week on Charlie Asked. Do you think that more young people will apply for health and social care courses in the future? Please comment down below, and let's see what your views are. I'd love to hear what you think about this. And also, as I mentioned, you can visit a variety of different college websites, but also South Essex College as well, .ac.uk for more details on if you're wanting to study health and social care and also childcare as well. It's a very, very important course. They're both available at the Southend and Thurrock campuses as well. But we're going to finish off now. That's the end of my Charlie's Asked segment. But we're just going to finish off very quickly with some news. I want to talk once again about GB News because, Zach, I want to start with some news about some of the changes coming and also some news about presenters because, Zach, we saw Andrew Neil on Thursday with Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
And there has been rumours going around that he might be quitting the channel. And obviously, presenters have been changed. Obviously, Alistair Stewart is believed to be back next week on his show after recovering from a hip injury. What do you make of the presenting lineups at GB News? Do you think that Andrew Neil has to be back? And do you know where he would go on the lineup? Because at the moment, the lineup looks very packed, doesn't it, for programming?
He will return. It's obvious now. I think it's obvious he's hooked up by video linked for Farage's show. He will return. He will return. It's obvious that he's going to return in September at some point, maybe on the 6th, maybe. But bit before that, I don't know. We've seen obviously as Stewart broke his had an injury of falling off for horse riding. He's back on Saturday. Good to see him back. I think he's one of the best presenters of GB News. We've also seen Nanu Koku start a new show this week. I didn't see much of it. I'll have to catch up and see what it's like. She's a decent presenter, even though sometimes she likes the sound of her own voice sometimes. I must admit, it's probably one of the better shows, the more tolerable shows. Dan Wootton's on holiday for the next 2 weeks, I believe. Charlie, Nigel Farage is on a couple of holiday weeks as well. I don't know who's going to be covering Farage's show. I think Mark Doe is covering Dan's show for a little bit now. So yeah, I suppose in some ways I can tolerate Mark Doe a little bit more, but he's just as bad as Dan Wootton sometimes. Who's going to replace Farage? I have no idea. We've seen Calvin Robertson turn up a little bit. I wonder if he could go into that slot a little bit. I don't know, Charlie, to be fair. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be very interesting to see who covers Farage.
Yeah, because I saw on the political correction today that he wasn't there, and it was Deanna Davidson, the Conservative MP, who was filling in for him. Well, I say filling in for him. She usually is in the studio, sometimes with Nigel. But yeah, it seems like he's on holiday. Dan Wootton's obviously decided he's going to take a break. And I actually got in contact with a couple of the GB News presenters this week as well, actually, over shows, who's on the schedules. And I know, I mean, Zach, to see Alistair Stewart back next week, though, that's going to be a big boost for the station because they've struggled a little bit without him. And I feel like with him at the helm of that show, he really makes it very special, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's one of the better presenters, really, to be honest, Charlie. He's an experienced journalist. He's experienced conversation and topical issues, politics, everything. He's an all-rounder who can make a show really good, and tolerable and very friendly as well, but harsh but friendly. But he's good to listen to. He's very good, and he's one of the best presenters of the show. And he's very enjoyable with him at the helm.
Yeah. And my final question, Zach, before I wrap this up, there was a special program that was released on the station called Afghanistan Human Story, presented by Colin Brazier. What have you taken away from that program that GB News have covered? Do you think it's a good program? Would you recommend it to anyone?
I thought it was one of their better programs. I thought this report's pretty good, better than most of the content they put out there. I really enjoyed it, actually. It's one of those special reports that they should do more often. I suppose having someone like Colin Brazier, who's obviously been to Afghanistan and seen it all, helped because he's an experienced presenter in that term. He was able to talk to, people who've been on the front line there, and it's been very good. I actually enjoyed the show. It took a few perspectives from it, and took, captured the mood of what happened there and how everyone's feeling with it. It was a good watch.
Yeah, I have to say, Zach, I agree with you. The show was really good. I watched some of it. I really enjoyed Colin's coverage of it. I thought he presented it really well. That was the first proper big special report program they've done, and they're now 10 weeks old. And all I can say is GB News will be going strength to strength as the months go on. And I really hope that they have a fantastic future in this country, and as well as that on the UK's broadcasting networks, because their station is, and I have to say, Zach, before I wrap this up, I do think GB News is a great station. I know whether people have opinions or not, the station has changed Britain. It's different. It's different news. They are, honestly, I think the lineup they've got is really important. And do you think GB News will be a big platform that some other news stations can build on?
It will be a big platform for right-wingers and conservative people to bring on. I think for the normal news watcher, it probably won't be. It'll probably be too much, and they'll probably get the news from BBC and Sky and everything like that. But it'll probably be a big platform for people who are right-wing, feel like they're not being heard. And it's not. It's a very small audience, to be fair, Charlie. So, if it turns it for conservatism and rivalry to talk radio and all that sort of, probably, yeah. To the traditional news, not really. it's not going to bother them one bit.
No, certainly. It's interesting. But please, guys, comment down below what you make of GB News, and do you think the station will continue to provide the way for right-wing content in this country? But that's all we got time for now on the Charlie Tolhurst Show. We'll be back again next week for the final weekend of August and the bank holiday weekend. School's back very soon in England, so we'll keep you updated on that. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Take care and goodbye.